I'm Cassandra Mitchell, 32. And yesterday my entire world collapsed when I borrowed my sister Heather's phone. A notification popped up from Family Matters No Cassie, a group chat I never knew existed. Scrolling through, I found screenshots of conversations about excluding me from my grandmother's will. My heart stopped when I saw Uncle Richard's message this weekend at the estate. We finalize everything. In that moment, scrolling through 3 years of messages plotting against me, I realized the family I'd die for was actively working to erase me from their lives, and I had exactly 48 hours to stop them. Before I dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever discovered someone's betrayal in an unexpected way, hit that like button. Subscribe to join our community of real-life drama survivors. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I fought back against my backstabbing family and what happened next. I sat in my apartment, staring at the screenshots I'd taken from Heather's phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my coffee mug. 3 years. They'd been plotting against me for 3 years in a chat group specifically created to exclude me. It all started innocently enough. My car broke down on the way home from work, and I'd called Heather, who lived nearby, for help. While waiting for AAA to arrive, I asked to borrow her phone to check my email since mine was nearly dead. That's when the notification appeared at the top of her screen: Family Matters No Cassie Richard. Everyone clear for Saturday. Remember the plan. My finger hovered over it, hesitating only briefly before curiosity and dread won out. I opened the chat and began scrolling. What I found destroyed me. Cassie would just blow through her inheritance like she does with everything else my brother Jason had written last week. Grandmother doesn't need to know about our little arrangement. Better for everyone if Cassie gets nothing, Uncle Richard replied. As I scrolled back through years of conversations, I discovered they'd been meeting without me for holidays when they told me they were too busy to get together. Photos of Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas celebrations, and even my grandmother's birthday parties, events I was told were canceled, flooded the screen. Cassie would just ask for money again anyway, Heather had written beneath a photo from last Christmas. Better she thinks we're all busy. But what hurt the most were the calculated discussions about my grandmother's will. Uncle Richard had been leading the charge, systematically convincing my grandmother that I was irresponsible and financially unstable. "I've been planting seeds with Mother," he wrote 6 months ago, suggesting Cassie might sell the family heirlooms. She's starting to come around to removing her from the will entirely. My siblings and cousins had chimed in with supportive messages, all while maintaining their loving facades to my face. Jason had supplied Richard with screenshots of my old social media posts from my struggling days taken out of context to paint me as reckless. I was still reeling when my phone rang. My grandmother's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice before answering. "Cassandra, dear," her warm voice came through the speaker. "I hope you're planning to join us at the estate this weekend. The whole family will be there, and I have some important matters to discuss." My heart raced. This was it. The gathering they'd been discussing. The weekend they planned to finalize cutting me out of the will. For a moment, I considered making an excuse not to attend, to avoid the pain of facing their betrayal. But then a surge of determination washed over me. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Grandma," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. "I'll be there Friday evening." After hanging up, I stared at the evidence of my family's betrayal. These people, my blood, had been systematically working to isolate me, to turn my grandmother against me, to cut me out of not just her will, but her life. Our lives. I wasn't going to let them succeed. I wasn't going to hide away and lick my wounds. I was going to that gathering, but not as the unsuspecting victim they expected. I was going to investigate, confront, and fight for my relationship with my grandmother. As I packed my bag for the weekend, a storm of emotions swirled within me. Hurt, anger, confusion, determination. But beneath it all was a burning question: why? What had I done to deserve such calculated betrayal from the people who were supposed to love me most? I was going to get answers. And then I was going to make them regret ever creating that chat group. The 2-hour drive to my grandmother's estate gave me plenty of time to reflect on our family dynamics, searching for clues I might have missed. The Mitchell family was well known in our community, largely due to my grandmother Elizabeth's status as a wealthy widow who had tripled her late husband's already substantial fortune through savvy investments. At 86, Grandma Elizabeth remained sharp as a tack. At least she had been the last time I saw her 3 months ago. We shared a special bond over our love of art and literature and similar personalities that my mother used to call stubborn as mules twice as clever. She'd been my rock after my parents died, even though the rest of the family seemed to resent our closeness. Uncle Richard, my father's older brother, had always been the controlling force in the family. A businessman who prided himself on his financial acumen, though I'd heard whispers that his company wasn't doing as well as he claimed. He'd always treated family relationships like business transactions, keeping a mental ledger of favors and slights. His wife, Aunt Patricia, was a social climber who measured her worth by the brands she wore and the people she knew. She'd always seemed embarrassed by my modest lifestyle and career struggles, as if my existence somehow reflected poorly on her. Their children, my cousins, Blake and Rebecca, had been spoiled from birth. Everything handed to them on silver platters. College paid for luxury cars. As graduation presents down payments on their first homes provided without question. They'd never known struggle a day in their lives and looked down on anyone who had. My sister Heather had always been competitive with me, especially for Grandma's attention. As children, she would deliberately break things and blame me or take credit for my achievements. She'd flourished in college while I struggled to rebuild my life and never let me forget it. Jason, my brother, was the family chameleon, always siding with whoever held the most power or offered the most advantage. He'd been my ally when we were younger, but gradually drifted toward Richard's orbit as our uncle's influence in the family grew. Everything changed when my parents died in a car accident when I was 19. I had to drop out of college to deal with the emotional fallout and financial reality. While Heather and Jason had grandmother's support to continue their education, I struggled through a series of minimum wage jobs trying to find my footing. It had taken me nearly a decade to build my graphic design career, from freelance gigs to a stable position at a respected firm. Years of eating ramen, sharing apartments with questionable roommates, and working around the clock. The family had watched my struggles with a mixture of pity and judgment, never quite offering the support I needed. Only Grandma Elizabeth had truly believed in me, offering encouragement rather than criticism. She'd understood my need to make it on my own even while she worried. Our Sunday phone calls had been my lifeline during the hardest times. As I turned onto the long, tree-lined drive leading to the estate, I wondered if my recent success had triggered this family conspiracy. After years of struggling, I had finally found my footing. My design work was winning awards, and I had just been promoted. Perhaps they resented that I had managed to succeed without the advantages they'd had. Or maybe they had always planned to cut me out, and I had simply never noticed the signs. The sprawling Victorian mansion came into view, its gray stone facade both familiar and suddenly threatening. Cars were already parked in the circular drive. Richard's Mercedes, Heather's Audi, Jason's BMW. The family fleet of luxury vehicles made my practical Honda look even more out of place. I parked and took a moment to compose myself, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror and practicing a neutral expression. I couldn't let them see how much I knew. Not yet. As I approached the front door, it swung open. Heather stood there with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Cassie, you made it." She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume overwhelming. Everyone's in the sitting room. Grandma's been asking for you." I searched her face for signs of guilt, for any indication that she remembered I had borrowed her phone yesterday, that she knew what I had discovered. But her expression revealed nothing as she looped her arm through mine, leading me into the lion's den. The family rose as I entered a choreography of fake smiles and hollow greetings. Uncle Richard approached first, champagne flute in hand. "There's our Cassandra," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "We were beginning to think you wouldn't tear yourself away from that job of yours." I caught the glance he exchanged, with Jason over my head, the slight narrowing of his eyes. They were all playing their parts perfectly. But now that I was looking for it, I could see the tension beneath their performances, the secret glances, the forced joviality. And in the center of it all sat Grandma Elizabeth, smaller than I remembered her hands, slightly trembling as she reached for me. "My Cassandra," she said, her voice still strong despite her fragile appearance. "Come sit by me and tell me everything." As I took my place beside her, feeling the family's eyes on my back, I wondered how much of what she knew about my life had been filtered through their lies. I squeezed her hand gently, vowing silently that by the end of this weekend she would know the truth. About all of us. Friday evening's dinner was an exercise in restraint. Grandma Elizabeth's longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Perry, had prepared her signature roast beef with all the trimmings, but despite the delicious food, every bite tasted like cardboard in my mouth. I sat at the massive oak dining table, hyper-aware of every glance, every whispered comment, every seemingly innocent question that might be a trap. Cassandra, Uncle Richard called from the head of the table, a position he'd assumed since my grandfather passed. "How is that little design job of yours going? Still making those? What do you call them, logos?" I detected the subtle condescension in his tone, the way he minimized my career achievements. The same achievements I'd proudly shared with Grandma over our phone calls. "Actually, Uncle Richard, I was recently promoted to creative director," I replied, keeping my tone light. "My team just won a national award for our campaign with Berkshire Mutual." A flash of annoyance crossed his face before he masked it with a smile. "How nice for you." Grandma Elizabeth beamed at me from across the table. "Cassandra has always been talented. Do you remember those drawings she used to make as a child? I still have them framed in my study." I noticed Heather's grip tighten around her wine glass. "Speaking of the study," Grandma continued, "I want everyone to join me there tomorrow afternoon. There are family matters we need to discuss." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Uncle Richard cleared his throat. "Mother, perhaps we should let everyone enjoy their weekend first. Business can wait until Sunday." "Nonsense," Grandma waved him off. "Better to get it done with so we can enjoy ourselves afterward." Richard raised his glass, effectively changing the subject. "A toast," he announced, "to family loyalty and protecting what matters most." His eyes lingered on me as he spoke a clear message beneath his words. After dinner, as everyone dispersed throughout the house, I overheard Heather and Jason speaking in hushed tones by the staircase. "She hasn't said anything about the phone," Heather whispered urgently. "Do you think she saw—" They abruptly stopped when they noticed me approaching. Jason made a show of yawning and announced he was turning in early. I cornered Heather before she could escape. "Thanks again for letting me borrow your phone yesterday. Saved me when my battery died." Her eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. "Oh, right, no problem. Did you find what you needed?" "I found exactly what I needed," I replied, holding her gaze until she looked away. "Well, good night then," she muttered, hurrying up the stairs. My childhood bedroom had been preserved like a museum exhibit, though I noticed several photographs and keepsakes were missing from the shelves. The drawer where I kept old journals was slightly ajar. Someone had been going through my things. Sleep evaded me, so around midnight I slipped out to explore the house. The familiar creaks of the old mansion brought back memories of happier times before betrayal had tainted everything. As I approached Grandma's study, I noticed light spilling from beneath the door. Voices drifted out, Uncle Richard and someone else. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. "The papers are ready," a male voice I didn't recognize said. "She just needs to sign tomorrow." "And you're certain it's airtight?" Richard asked. "There can be no challenges later. As long as she's deemed competent when signing, it's ironclad." The door suddenly opened and I ducked around the corner, heart pounding. Through the crack where the study door remained partially open, I glimpsed legal papers spread across Grandma's antique desk. Uncle Richard escorted a man in a suit to the front door, their conversation fading as they walked away. "Who are you hiding from?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. A woman in scrubs stood behind me, eyebrow raised. Her name tag read, "Maya Torres, Home Health." I'm Cassandra," I stammered, "Elizabeth's granddaughter." "I know who you are," she said, her expression softening. "Your grandmother has your picture by her bed. She asks for you often." "She does." This didn't align with the family's narrative that Grandma barely mentioned me. Maya looked around cautiously before whispering, "Can we talk somewhere private?" I led her to the sunroom at the back of the house, far from the bedrooms. Maya sat across from me, her face serious in the moonlight, filtering through the windows. "I've been your grandmother's caregiver for 8 months," she explained. "And something isn't right here. She asks why you don't visit more, why you don't return her calls." "But I call her every Sunday," I protested. "She never mentioned wanting me to visit more." Maya's expression confirmed my growing suspicion. "Her phone access is monitored, and visitors are strictly controlled. I've overheard your uncle telling people you're too busy to visit, that you don't care enough to make time for her." My hands clenched into fists. "They've been intercepting our communication." "I think so," Maya nodded. "And her medication schedule has been irregular, especially when your uncle has meetings with her." The implications made me sick. "Is she in danger?" "Not immediately, but I'm concerned." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a slip of paper with her phone number. "I care about Elizabeth. If you're trying to help her, I'll do what I can." As Maya left to complete her evening rounds, I sat alone in the moonlit sunroom processing this new information. The conspiracy ran deeper than I'd imagined. They weren't just trying to cut me out of the will. They'd been systematically cutting me out of Grandma's life, poisoning our relationship from both sides. I returned to my room and lay awake, forming a plan. Tomorrow I would need to gather evidence, find a way to speak to Grandma alone, and figure out exactly what Richard was up to with those legal documents. The family meeting was set for tomorrow afternoon. I had less than 24 hours to unravel 3 years of deception. But now I had something I didn't have before: an ally in Maya, and the knowledge that my bond with Grandma hadn't been imagined. Someone had been working very hard to break it. With that thought providing some comfort, I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, mentally preparing for the battle ahead. I woke early Saturday morning, the golden sunlight streaming through the curtains at odds with the darkness I knew lurked in this house. I dressed carefully in a simple blouse and slacks. Professional enough for the family meeting, but comfortable enough for the investigation I planned to conduct. Downstairs, the family had gathered for breakfast. I pasted on a pleasant expression and joined them, declining Mrs. Perry's offer of pancakes in favor of just coffee. My stomach was too knotted for food. "Sleep well?" Cassie Jason asked, buttering his toast with exaggerated focus. Like a baby, I lied. "This house always feels like home." I observed them as we ate, picking up on dynamics I'd previously missed. The way Blake checked his phone nervously. How Aunt Patricia kept touching her pearls when Grandma spoke. The glances between Richard and Heather. Remember the summer we all went sailing, Cassandra Grandma Elizabeth reminisced. For your 25th birthday? I smiled at the memory. Of course. You arranged that wonderful party at the lake house. Blake looked up, confused. Wasn't that the 4th of July celebration? No, I corrected. It was specifically for my birthday in June. But I thought Blake began before Aunt Patricia cut him off. Blake, darling, pass the sugar, she interrupted loudly. When Grandma looked away, Patricia shot Blake a warning glare. Interesting. They'd been rewriting family history, erasing events that centered around me. After breakfast, I noticed Uncle Richard heading toward the garage. On impulse, I followed at a distance watching as he unlocked his Mercedes and retrieved a leather portfolio from the trunk. He glanced around furtively before tucking it under his arm. Instead of returning to the house, he walked to the garden gazebo, where he spread several documents across the table. From my hiding place behind a large hydrangea bush, I couldn't make out the details, but I could see columns of numbers, Grandma's letterhead, and what appeared to be investment statements. When Richard left temporarily, I seized my chance. Rushing to the gazebo, I quickly photographed several pages with my phone. A quick glance confirmed my suspicions. Financial documents showing transfers from Grandma's accounts to offshore holdings, investment losses, concealed by creative accounting and projections, showing the estate's value declining sharply. Richard was embezzling from Grandmother and doing a poor job of covering his tracks. I barely made it back to my hiding place before Richard returned, now accompanied by an older man who I recognized as the family's longtime gardener, Kevin. The north garden looks fine, Kevin was saying, clearly uncomfortable. Mrs. Mitchell always said to keep it natural. Just tear it out, Richard snapped. Once the house is mine, I'm modernizing everything anyway. That old-fashioned garden is the first thing to go. The house Grandma had always intended to leave the estate to all of us collectively with the understanding it would never be sold. Kevin nodded stiffly and walked away. I waited until Richard had packed up his documents before approaching the gardener. Kevin, it's Cassandra Mitchell. Do you remember me? The weathered man turned, his face brightening. Miss Cassandra, it's been too long. Your grandmother mentions you all the time. Another confirmation that contradicted the family narrative. Kevin, can we talk? I asked. About my Uncle Richard. Kevin glanced around nervously before nodding. We walked to the tool shed, where he closed the door behind us. I've worked for your family for 32 years, he began without preamble. Your grandmother is a fine woman who deserves better than what's happening. What do you know? I asked. Your uncle has gambling debts. Big ones. He's been borrowing from your grandmother for years, but it's gotten worse. I've overheard things. Kevin shook his head. He needs the estate, not just a portion. He's underwater with some dangerous people. And my siblings, Heather and Jason. Both in financial trouble, too. Your sister's business is failing. That boutique she opened is hemorrhaging money. And your brother's divorce cleaned him out. Child support for 3 kids and alimony. Kevin sighed. They all need money, and they need it soon. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just about resenting me. They were desperate. There's something else you should know, Kevin added reluctantly. I shouldn't tell you this, but your grandmother changed her will last year. Made you the primary beneficiary and executor of the estate. Said you were the only one with a level head for business and a heart that remembers family comes first. My breath caught. Richard knows. Found out about 3 months ago. He's been different since then. More desperate. As I left the shed, I spotted Richard watching me from an upstairs window. His expression was cold, calculating. I lifted my hand in a casual wave, pretending I hadn't just discovered his motives. Back in the house, I found the family scattered throughout the common areas. Aunt Patricia was arranging flowers in the living room, her movements jerky with tension. "Patricia," I said casually, "Grandma seems a bit confused today. Is she feeling all right?" Patricia's fingers fumbled with a rose. "She's fine. Just tired." "Has she seen her regular doctor recently? I noticed her medication looks different than before." The vase Patricia was holding nearly slipped from her grasp. "What do you know about her medication?" "Nothing specific," I said innocently. "Just noticed the pills seem larger than I remember." Patricia's face hardened. "You always were too nosy for your own good, Cassandra. Some things aren't your concern." "My grandmother's health is absolutely my concern," I countered, dropping the pretense of casual conversation. "You disappeared from her life for years," Patricia hissed. "You don't get to waltz back in now and start making accusations." "I never disappeared. I called every week, visited whenever I could," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Someone has been lying to her about me." Richard appeared in the doorway, his timing too perfect to be coincidental. "Is everything all right in here?" he asked, his voice deceptively pleasant. "Just fine, darling," Patricia replied, composing herself. "Cassandra and I were just catching up." Richard turned to me, his eyes cold. "Cassandra, a word." He led me to the library, closing the door behind us. The room still smelled of leather and old books, but the comfort I usually felt here was absent. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Richard asked, his facade of pleasantness gone. "Visiting my grandmother," I replied evenly. "Is that a problem?" "Don't play dumb. I saw you with Kevin." "What did he tell you?" "Nothing I didn't already know," I bluffed. Richard stepped closer, his height intimidating as he looked down at me. "Let me make something very clear. Your grandmother is old and confused. The family has made decisions that are in her best interest. And yours. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay out of matters that don't concern you." "Is that a threat, Uncle Richard?" "It's advice," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Family advice. Remember your place, Cassandra. You're the struggling one, the one who couldn't get her life together. No one will believe anything you say over us." As he left, his warning hung in the air. I waited a few minutes before heading upstairs, intent on checking on Grandma. But as I approached her suite, Aunt Patricia emerged from the room, blocking my path. "She's resting," Patricia said firmly. "Doctor's orders. No visitors until the family meeting." I retreated, frustration building. They were isolating her, controlling access, likely manipulating her with medication. The family meeting was just hours away, and I still hadn't managed to speak with Grandma alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya, something wrong with her meds. "Meet me by the kitchen in 10. The conspiracy ran deeper than I'd imagined. But now I had evidence of financial misconduct, confirmation of the will change, and a medical professional concerned about Grandma's care. The pieces were coming together. But would it be enough to stop them before the family meeting? After lunch, the family dispersed for afternoon activities, a transparent attempt to separate us. Uncle Richard suggested I might want to rest before the meeting, his tone making it less a suggestion than a command. Heather and Blake headed to the tennis court, while Jason and Aunt Patricia conveniently volunteered to keep Grandma company. "Actually," I said, "I think I'll drive into town. I forgot to pack a few things." This was a test. Would they try to stop me from leaving? Richard's smile tightened. "Take my car if you'd like. Yours probably needs a rest after the long drive yesterday." "No thanks," I replied. "I prefer my own." As I walked to the garage, I could feel eyes watching from various windows of the house. The weight of their surveillance made my skin crawl. My Honda was parked between Jason's BMW and Heather's Audi. As I approached, I noticed something odd, a small puddle beneath my car. Kneeling down, I traced it to the source and felt my heart stop. Brake fluid. I examined the underside of the vehicle and found what I was looking for, a clean slice in the brake line. This wasn't just about the will anymore. Someone had actively tried to harm me. A shadow fell across me. I whirled around to find Blake standing there, his expression too casual. "Car trouble?" he asked, hands in his pockets. "Seems like it," I answered carefully. "Someone cut my brake line." Blake's eyebrows rose in exaggerated surprise. "That's a serious accusation, Cassie. Why would anyone do that?" "You tell me. I saw you out here earlier checking on the cars." His face hardened, the pretense dropping. "You know Cassie accidents happen all the time on those mountain roads. Especially to people who don't know when to mind their own business." He turned and walked away, leaving the threat hanging in the air between us. I pulled out my phone and took photos of the damage, making sure the evidence was documented. Then I headed back to the house, my heart pounding. This had escalated beyond family squabbles. Someone was willing to risk my life to protect their interests. Inside, I found the family gathered in the sitting room, Grandma looking pale in her favorite armchair. "I noticed someone tampered with my car," I announced, watching their faces carefully. "Cut the brake line." "What are you talking about?" Jason scoffed. "That's ridiculous," Heather added. "Why would anyone do that?" Grandma looked alarmed. "Cassandra, are you sure?" Before I could answer, Richard interjected, "Mother, Cassandra has always had a flair for the dramatic. Remember her stalker in college? That turned out to be nothing." "That wasn't nothing," I protested. "And this isn't either. Someone deliberately damaged my car." "Perhaps you ran over something on the drive here," Aunt Patricia suggested smoothly. "Those old cars are so unreliable. It was deliberately cut," I insisted. "I want to call the police." "And tell them what?" Richard laughed. "That your family is trying to kill you because of an inheritance." "You sound paranoid, Cassandra. Perhaps you're working too hard these days." I looked to Grandma for support, but noticed something concerning. Her eyes were unfocused, her hands trembling more than usual. She seemed confused by the conversation, looking to Richard for guidance. "Grandma, are you feeling all right?" I asked, moving closer to her. "She's fine," Patricia snapped. "Just tired from all this unnecessary drama." But I'd seen that look before. When my grandfather was on heavy medication during his final illness, I made a mental note to find Maya as soon as possible. The family closed ranks, changing the subject and dismissing my concerns. Their gaslighting was skilled, practiced, making me question whether I was overreacting. But the cut brake line was real, and Blake's threat had been clear. I excused myself and searched for Maya, finding her in the medication room adjacent to Grandma's suite. "Look at this," she whispered, showing me 2 pill bottles with the same prescription label. "The ones your grandmother is actually taking have twice the dosage indicated on her chart. They're keeping her sedated, especially before meetings with her lawyer." "Who administers her medication?" "Your Aunt Patricia insisted on taking over that role last month," Maya explained. "Said the family wanted to be more involved in her care. I've been documenting the discrepancies, but they're careful." I took photos of the medication bottles with my phone. "This is elder abuse." "There's more," Maya said hesitantly. "Your grandmother has been asking why you don't return her letters. She said she's written to you several times about important matters." I felt sick. I never received any letters. Before Maya could respond, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered to hear my boss's voice. "Cassandra, I'm calling to follow up on the resignation email you sent this morning." What? I gasped. "I didn't send any resignation email. It came from your work account saying you're moving abroad and need to quit immediately," he explained, sounding confused. "It was very unprofessional. Not like you at all." "That wasn't me," I insisted. "Someone must have hacked my account." After convincing my boss to disregard the fake resignation and promising to sort things out Monday, I hung up mind racing. They were attacking my career now, too. I traced the call to the home office where I found Jason shutting down his laptop. Impersonating me to my employer, I confronted him. "That's identity theft, Jason. It's a crime." For a moment, his confident facade cracked. "You don't understand, Cassie. We need this to work out a certain way. By destroying my life, cutting my brake line, isolating Grandma." "The brake line wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered. "That was Blake going rogue, but the rest? It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it for me," I demanded. Jason ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. "Richard is in trouble, serious trouble. The kind that gets people hurt. He owes money to people who don't send collection notices. They send people to break your legs. And Heather and I, we're not much better off. So you decided to steal Grandma's money and cut me out." "It wasn't like that at first," Jason insisted. "It started with Richard borrowing money, promising to pay it back. Then Grandma changed her will to favor you and he panicked. It escalated." "You could have come to me," I said, anger mixing with hurt. "I'm your sister." "And say what? Hey sis, we're all broke and desperate mind, giving up your inheritance." He shook his head. "It's too late anyway. Richard has everything in motion. The papers are ready, the lawyer is paid off, and Grandma is compliant." "It's not too late," I argued. "We can fix this, Jason. But not by destroying our family." He looked at me with genuine regret. "I wish that were true, Cassie. But you don't know Richard like I do. He won't stop. And now that you know," he left the implications hanging. Jason left me standing alone in the office, his warning clear. I was up against more than family jealousy. I was facing desperate people with dangerous connections. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, nearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I was facing. The family had worked for years to isolate me from Grandma, manipulated her, and now they were actively threatening my safety and livelihood. For a moment, I considered leaving, packing my bag, calling a taxi, and escaping this toxic environment. It would be the easier path. Let them have the money if they were that desperate. My gaze fell on an old photo album peeking out from the bookshelf. I pulled it out, recognizing it as one Grandma and I had put together during the summer after my parents died. Page after page of memories. Grandma teaching me to paint, our trip to the art museum in New York, baking cookies in the kitchen downstairs. On the last page was a note in her elegant handwriting to my Cassandra, who reminds me that family is more than blood. It's love and trust. You are the heart of this family, even if the others haven't realized it yet. I closed the album, resolve hardening in my chest. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. It was about protecting Grandma from those who would exploit her, about standing up for the truth, about refusing to let them erase me from my own family. They had their conspiracy. They had their group chat. They had years of practice manipulating and lying. But I had evidence now. I had allies in Maya and Kevin. And most importantly, I had the truth. Tomorrow's family meeting wouldn't go as they planned. Not if I had anything to say about it. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight as I crept out of my bedroom. The old house settled around me, wooden beams creaking with age and secrets. I had arranged to meet Maya outside Grandma's study at 1215 when the night nurse would be on her break and the family would be asleep. The hallways were dimly lit by small wall sconces, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for me as I passed. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, pausing occasionally to listen for footsteps. Maya was already waiting when I arrived, nervously checking her watch. "We have 20 minutes, she whispered, producing a key from her pocket. "Mrs. Mitchell gave me this for emergencies. I'm not sure this qualifies, but—" "It does," I assured her as she unlocked the heavy oak door. They're taking advantage of her. That's an emergency. The study smelled of leather and lavender. Grandma's signature scent. Maya switched on a small desk lamp, casting a warm circle of light that didn't reach the windows. We worked quickly, Maya keeping watch while I searched through the desk drawers. In the bottom drawer beneath a false bottom I remembered from childhood explorations, I found what we were looking for. Grandma's original will dated just 8 months ago. I scanned it quickly, my suspicions confirmed. I was named executor of the estate and the Mitchell Family Foundation, with specific provisions ensuring the estate would remain intact as a family property. The inheritance was divided among all family members, with slightly larger portions allocated to me and to charitable causes Grandma cared about. More importantly, there was a letter addressed to me written in Grandma's hand. "My dearest Cassandra," it began. "If you're reading this, something has happened to prevent me from telling you these things in person. I fear Richard has been mismanaging my affairs for some time. I've noticed discrepancies in the accounts properties sold without my full knowledge and investments made against my explicit instructions. I've appointed you executor because you alone have shown the integrity and judgment needed to protect our family legacy. Trust no legal documents presented after this date, unless I have discussed them with you personally. Your loving grandmother." My hands shook as I photographed each page with my phone. Next, I found Richard's altered version of the will, ready for signing. It named him as sole executor and primary beneficiary, with token amounts going to Heather, Jason, and the cousins. My name appeared nowhere in the document. "Cassandra, look at this," Maya called softly from the computer. She had managed to access Grandma's email account, revealing dozens of sent messages to my email address, none of which I had ever received. They detailed concerns about Richard's behavior, questions about my absence at family events I'd never been invited to, and increasingly worried inquiries about why I never responded to her letters. "They've been intercepting her mail and emails," I murmured, taking screenshots. "Isolating her completely." The computer also contained financial records, showing systematic transfers from Grandma's accounts to offshore holdings I suspected were controlled by Richard. The amounts had increased over time, growing more brazen. "There's something else you should see," Maya said, opening a folder labeled Family Chat Logs. "Your grandmother had her assistant print these for her when she began suspecting something was wrong." My heart raced as I flipped through pages of the very group chat I had discovered on Heather's phone. Grandma had known about it for months, but hadn't confronted the family directly, choosing instead to gather evidence. "She's smarter than they give her credit for," I said, feeling a surge of pride. A noise in the hallway froze us both. Maya quickly switched off the desk lamp as footsteps approached the study door. We pressed ourselves against the wall behind a large bookcase, hardly daring to breathe. The door opened and Heather's silhouette appeared in the doorway. She stood listening for a moment, then stepped inside, switching on her phone's flashlight. "Cassie," she called softly. "I know you're in here. I saw your door open." I remained silent, weighing my options. Maya squeezed my arm in warning, but something in Heather's voice made me step forward into the light. "What do you want, Heather?" She jumped, nearly dropping her phone. "Jesus, Cassie, you scared me." "Not as scared as I was when I found my brake line cut," I replied coldly. "Was that your idea too?" Heather's eyes widened. "I had nothing to do with that. That was Blake. He's unstable. Richard's been egging him on, filling his head with ideas about what he'll do with his share." "And what's your excuse?" I asked. "What made you turn against me? We're sisters." In the harsh light of her phone, Heather looked suddenly older, tired lines etched around her eyes. "My business is failing, Cassie. I've remortgaged my house, maxed out my credit cards. I have nothing left. Richard promised to bail me out if I helped convince Grandma you'd abandoned her. By intercepting my calls, hiding her letters to me, creating a group chat specifically to exclude and undermine me, she at least had the decency to look ashamed. It wasn't supposed to go this far. It started with just omitting to tell you about certain family events. Then, Richard wanted more. And you gave it to him. Year after year. What choice did I have? Heather's voice cracked. You don't know what he's like when you cross him. What he's capable of. I'm getting a pretty good idea, I said grimly. A tense standoff followed, broken by a sudden noise from elsewhere in the house. A door closing, followed by hushed voices. You need to go, Heather whispered urgently. Richard and Blake are up. They've been drinking in the library. Why are you warning me? I asked suspiciously. Heather's expression was complex. Guilt, fear, and something like resolve mixing together. Because what Blake did to your car crossed a line. And because she hesitated, because despite everything, you're still my sister. She moved toward the door, checking the hallway. Go back to your room. Be careful tomorrow. Richard is desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. As Heather slipped out, Maya emerged from her hiding place. Can you trust her? I don't know, I admitted. But we've got what we came for. We carefully returned everything to its place, leaving the study exactly as we had found it. Maya locked the door behind us, and we separated in the hallway, agreeing to meet again before the family meeting. I had nearly reached my room when a hand clamped over my mouth from behind. I was dragged backward, kicking and struggling toward the service stairs. In the darkness, I couldn't see my attacker, but the smell of expensive cologne and whiskey identified him as Blake. He pushed me through a door into what I recognized as the wine cellar, a cavernous room beneath the kitchen rarely used since grandfather's time. The door closed with an ominous click, and I heard the key turn in the lock. Sleep well, Cousin Blake's voice taunted from the other side. If anyone asks, I'll say you went for an early morning drive. Hopefully you'll be found before you freeze. The cellar was notoriously cold, maintained at a constant 55 degrees for the wine collection. In summer it was merely chilly, but in winter it could be dangerously cold overnight. And I was wearing only thin pajamas. I pounded on the heavy door, calling for help, but the cellar was too far from the occupied bedrooms for anyone to hear. After several futile minutes, I forced myself to calm down and assess my situation. The cellar had no windows, and only the one door. My phone was still in my pocket, but there was no signal this far underground. The only light came from a single bulb, activated by a pull string. I examined the door carefully, remembering from childhood explorations that the lock was old, a simple mechanism that might be manipulated. Using a metal corkscrew, I found among the wine tools I worked at the lock for what felt like hours, fingers numbing from the cold. Just as despair began to set in, I felt the mechanism give. The door swung open, revealing the deserted kitchen bathed in pre-dawn light. I had been trapped for hours. I crept back to my room shivering violently and wrapped myself in blankets. Despite the danger, I felt a grim satisfaction. I now had proof that Blake was willing to resort to potentially lethal means to silence me. And I had the evidence needed to expose the entire conspiracy. The family meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. I had a few hours to prepare my case, speak with Maya and Kevin, and figure out how to get Grandma alone long enough to show her what I'd discovered. As morning light filtered through my window, I reviewed the evidence on my phone. Financial records showing embezzlement, email records proving interference with communications, photos of medication being manipulated, the original will, and a documentation of the group chat plotting against me. It wouldn't just be my word against theirs. I had proof. And if Richard still refused to back down, I was prepared to involve the authorities. The family thought they had been so clever conspiring against me for years. But they had underestimated me. And more importantly, they had underestimated Grandma. Today, we would both show them exactly what we were made of. Sunday morning arrived with a heavy atmosphere hanging over the mansion. The family gathered for breakfast, an elaborate spread that no one seemed interested in eating. Conversation was minimal, tense glances exchanged over coffee cups. Uncle Richard kept checking his watch while Aunt Patricia fussed unnecessarily with the table settings. "The family meeting will be in the formal dining room at 2, Richard announced. "Mother has requested everyone's presence." "How is Grandma this morning?" I asked innocently. "I thought I'd visit her before the meeting." "She's resting," Patricia said quickly. "Doctor's orders." New disturbances. I caught Maya's eye as she entered to clear some dishes. Our brief nod communicated that our plan was still in motion. The hours crawled by. I spent the morning carefully organizing the evidence on my phone, backing everything up to a secure cloud account in case something happened to the device. I also wrote detailed emails to my lawyer and a trusted friend set to send automatically if I didn't cancel them by tomorrow morning. At 1:45, I made my way to the formal dining room. The massive mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier place cards positioned at each seat. I noticed mine was at the far end, as distant from Grandma's position at the head as possible. I deliberately moved my place card, positioning myself at Grandma's right hand, the traditional place for the trusted advisor. By the time the others arrived, I was calmly seated, hands folded before me. Richard's face darkened when he saw where I was sitting, but with the others filing in behind him, he couldn't make a scene. He took the seat at Grandma's, left jaw clenched. Grandma was the last to enter, escorted by Maya. I was shocked by her appearance. She seemed to have aged years since Friday. Her movements were unsteady, her eyes unfocused. Maya helped her into her chair, discreetly showing me a pill bottle hidden in her palm. Confirmation that they had drugged Grandma heavily for this meeting. "Thank you all for coming," Richard began smoothly. "Mother has some important matters to discuss regarding the family estate." Grandma blinked slowly, looking confused. "Yes, the estate. Richard has been handling things." "Actually, Grandma," I interjected gently, "I'd like to ask you something first. Have you been receiving my calls and letters?" Patricia cut in before Grandma could answer. "This isn't the time for personal questions, Cassandra. We're here to discuss legal matters." I think it's exactly the time I countered, since the legal matters seem to involve systematically cutting me out of Grandma's life. "What are you talking about?" Jason asked, feigning confusion. I pulled out my phone. "I'm talking about this group chat you've all been part of for 3 years. Family Matters No Cassie." Catchy name, by the way. The color drained from Heather's face. Richard remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the table. "I've seen everything," I continued. "The conversations about excluding me from family events. The plans to intercept Grandma's communications with me. The systematic campaign to convince her I didn't care about her anymore." "This is ridiculous," Richard scoffed. "Mother Cassandra is clearly upset about something and creating drama." "Let her speak," Grandma said, her voice suddenly stronger. I noticed Maya had slipped her a glass of water and suspected she might have given Grandma something to counteract the sedatives. "I have evidence," I said, "of financial misconduct involving the estate. Unauthorized transfers to offshore accounts. Property sales conducted without proper authorization." I turned to Grandma. "They've been stealing from you, and they plan to take everything once they had you sign a new will today." Richard stood abruptly. "That's enough. Mother is not well, and you're upsetting her with these fabricated accusations." "They're not fabricated," I replied calmly, sliding my phone toward Grandma. "Everything is documented here, including Blake's attempt to harm me by cutting my brake line and locking me in the wine cellar last night." Gasps came from around the table. Blake started to protest, but Richard silenced him with a gesture. "This is all very dramatic, Cassandra, but where is your proof?" Richard demanded. "A group chat that may or may not exist. Alleged financial records you could have fabricated. I have the original will. I answered the one from 8 months ago that names me executor and ensures the estate remains intact for the entire family. I have Grandma's letter explaining her concerns about your financial management. And I have these." I nodded to Maya, who placed a folder on the table. Printouts of emails between Grandma and me that were intercepted, documentation of medication being tampered with, and statements from both Maya and Kevin about what they've witnessed. The room fell silent as Grandma began to look through the documents, her expression hardening with each page she turned. "Richard," she said finally, her voice cutting through the tension. "Explain this." For the first time, Richard's composure cracked. "Mother, these are complex financial matters that Cassandra doesn't understand. I've been protecting your assets by transferring them to accounts in your name," Grandma asked sharply. "Temporary measures," he insisted, "for tax purposes." And this group chat, the intercepted letters, Blake attacking Cassandra, Richard's defense crumbled further. "We were trying to protect you. Cassandra abandoned the family for years." "I was never more than a phone call away," I interrupted. "A phone call that apparently never reached Grandma because someone was screening her calls." "Is this true?" Grandma demanded, looking around the table. "Have you all been part of this?" Silence answered her. Then, surprisingly, Heather spoke up. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "It's all true. The group chat keeping Cassie away from family events, lying to both of you about the other." She couldn't meet Grandma's eyes. "Richard convinced us it was necessary. We were all in financial trouble, and when you changed your will to favor Cassie, so you decided to cut her out completely." Grandma finished, her voice heavy with disappointment. "It went further than that," I added. "Jason impersonated me to my employer trying to get me fired. Blake tampered with my car and locked me in the cellar overnight. This wasn't just about inheritance. They were trying to destroy my life." Grandma turned to her lawyer, who had been sitting silently at the far end of the table. "Mr. Bennett, is the original will still valid?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, Mrs. Mitchell. The new documents haven't been signed." "Good," Grandma said firmly, "because I have no intention of signing them now." Richard's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. I need that money. Do you have any idea what will happen to me if I don't pay back?" He stopped abruptly, realizing what he was revealing. "Pay back whom?" Richard Grandma asked. The silence that followed was deafening. I think Grandma said finally that everyone except Cassandra needs to leave this room. "Now." "Mother, be reasonable," Richard pleaded. "We can work this out as a family." "A family doesn't conspire against its own," Grandma replied coldly. "A family doesn't lie and manipulate and threaten. I'm not sure what you all are at this point, but you're not behaving like my family." Maya moved to stand beside Grandma's chair, a clear message that she wouldn't allow any further manipulation. Kevin appeared in the doorway, his weathered face grim, effectively blocking the exit. "You can't just cut us all out," Patricia protested. "I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet," Grandma replied, "but I suggest you all give me space to think about it. I want everyone out of the house by evening. Cassandra will stay with me." As the family began to file out, shock and defeat on their faces, Richard made one last desperate attempt. He lunged toward me, grabbing my phone from the table. "I'll destroy all her evidence. Without it, it's just her word against ours." "It's already backed up," I informed him calmly, "and sent to my lawyer with instructions to take it to the authorities if anything happens to me." Kevin stepped forward, his large frame imposing. "I think it's time for you to leave, Mr. Mitchell." Richard looked around wildly, seeing his plans crumbling before him. The facade of the respectable businessman finally shattered completely. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled at me. "They'll come for me, and then they'll come for all of you. This family will be destroyed anyway." "You were doing a pretty good job of that yourself," I replied evenly. As Richard was escorted out, Heather lingered in the doorway. "Cassie," she said hesitantly, "I know it doesn't mean much now, but I'm sorry. I should have stood up to him years ago." I didn't answer. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep for easy forgiveness. But I didn't turn away, either, leaving the possibility of reconciliation open for the future. When the room finally emptied, Grandma and I were left alone, the evidence of family treachery spread across the table between us. She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "My dear girl," she said, tears in her eyes, "what they put you through. Can you ever forgive me for not seeing it sooner?" "There's nothing to forgive," I assured her. "They manipulated both of us." "But not anymore," she said with determination. "Now we rebuild, on truth this time." As Maya brought us tea, Grandma and I began the long conversation we should have had years ago, finally free to speak without interference, plotting not revenge, but recovery. For ourselves and perhaps eventually for our broken family. The aftermath of the family meeting left the house eerily quiet. One by one, family members packed their belongings and departed, Aunt Patricia tight-lipped and refusing to meet anyone's eyes, Jason hesitant and clearly conflicted, Blake sullen and threatening under his breath. Heather was the last to leave, pausing to press a note into my hand with her contact information and a simple message: "When you're ready to talk, I'm here." By evening only, Grandma, Maya, Kevin, and I remained in the mansion that suddenly felt too large, too empty. We relocated Grandma to the master suite where Maya could monitor her more closely as the sedatives worked their way out of her system. "I've changed the locks," Kevin informed me, as we shared a simple dinner in the kitchen. "And I've got a friend from my security days coming to install cameras tomorrow." "Do you think that's necessary?" I asked, though the cut brake line and wine cellar incident suggested it absolutely was. "Richard isn't the type to accept defeat," Kevin said gravely. "Especially not with what he has at stake." As if summoned by his name, headlights swept across the kitchen windows as a car pulled into the driveway. Kevin moved to the security panel by the door, activating the newly armed system. "It's Richard," he confirmed, looking at the monitor. "And he's brought someone with him." My heart raced as I recognized the second man, Mr. Hoffman, the lawyer who had been preparing the fraudulent will. Kevin's hand moved to the phone, ready to call the police, but I stopped him. "Let me talk to them first," I said. "We need to know what Richard's planning." "Not alone," Kevin insisted, and I nodded gratefully. The doorbell rang its chime, echoing through the empty halls. Kevin opened the door, but remained firmly in the threshold, blocking entry. "Mrs. Mitchell isn't receiving visitors," he stated flatly. Richard's smile was strained, desperate. "This isn't a social call. My mother's mental competence is in question, and as her son, I have concerns about undue influence being exerted by certain parties." He nodded toward me. "That's rich coming from you," I said, stepping forward. "Considering the medications you've been giving her." Mr. Hoffman cleared his throat. "I have papers here authorizing a psychological evaluation of Elizabeth Mitchell, with Richard Mitchell named as her temporary guardian during the assessment period." "Those papers are fraudulent," I stated firmly. "And we have evidence of Richard's financial crimes and elder abuse." "Do you really want to be an accomplice to that, Mr. Hoffman?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, but Richard pressed forward. "My mother is clearly being manipulated by Cassandra, who has fabricated evidence and turned her against her family. I'm acting in her best interests." "No, Richard, you're not." We all turned to see Grandma standing in the hallway, Maya supportive at her side. Though still frail, there was nothing confused or diminished about her now. Her eyes were clear, her voice steady. Mother Richard began his tone wheedling, "You're not well. These people are taking advantage." "Enough," Grandma's voice cracked like a whip. "I've seen the evidence, the financial records, the emails, the group chat. I know what you've been doing, what you've all been doing. Taking advantage of my trust, stealing from me, turning my family against each other." I can explain everything, Richard insisted, desperation bleeding through his confident facade. "I'm sure you can," Grandma replied coldly. "You've always been good with explanations, Richard." Too good. She stepped forward, her small frame somehow commanding the entire space. "Mr. Hoffman, whatever papers Richard has given you are based on fraud. I am perfectly competent as my doctor. My real doctor, not the one Richard selected, will attest. Now either leave my property willingly, or I'll have Kevin call the police and show them the evidence of embezzlement and elder abuse we've compiled." Hoffman looked from Richard to Grandma, clearly reassessing the situation. "Perhaps we should discuss this another time when things are calmer." "There's nothing to discuss," Grandma stated firmly. "And if you value your law license, I suggest you reconsider your association with my son." The lawyer backed away, mumbling excuses. Richard made no move to follow, his face contorting with rage. "You have no idea what you're doing," he hissed. "I owe money to people who don't take no for an answer. Dangerous people." "And whose fault is that?" Grandma asked. "You've been stealing from me for years." "How much of it went to gambling debts, Richard?" His silence was answer enough. "Whatever trouble you're in," I said, "this isn't the solution. Threatening Grandma, manipulating her, turning the family against me, none of it solves the real problem." "You don't understand," Richard's voice cracked. "I'm ruined without this money. Worse than ruined. They'll come after me, after my family." "Then perhaps it's time to face the consequences of your actions," Grandma said, though her voice held a note of sadness beneath the resolve. Richard's desperation turned to fury. He lunged forward, suddenly pushing past Kevin to grab Grandma's arm. "You're signing those papers. You're giving me what I need, or I swear." He never finished the threat. Kevin pulled him away, restraining him with practiced ease. Maya had already dialed 911, speaking rapidly into the phone. "It's over, Richard," I said quietly. "You've lost." He struggled against Kevin's grip, his face a mask of rage and fear. "You think you've won? This isn't over. When they come looking for their money, I'll tell them exactly where to find you all." The distant wail of police sirens cut through his rant. Richard's struggles subsided, replaced by a cold, calculating look that sent chills down my spine. "Family loyalty," he spat. "That's what you always preached, Mother. Where's your loyalty now? Throwing your own son to the wolves." "Loyalty is earned," Grandma replied steadily. "And it requires truth. Something you seem to have forgotten. When the police arrived, we provided statements and evidence." Richard was taken away, still making threats and accusations. Mr. Hoffman, sensing which way the wind was blowing, quickly distanced himself from the situation, promising to cooperate with any investigation. After the police left, the house fell into an exhausted silence. Maya helped Grandma back to her room while Kevin made a final check of the security system before heading to the guest house. I found myself alone in the study, surrounded by the evidence of betrayal we had gathered. Family photos stared down from the walls, smiling faces hiding years of resentment and manipulation. I wondered how much of my family life had been real and how much had been an elaborate performance. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Grandma stood in the doorway, wrapped in her favorite shawl. "I couldn't sleep," she explained. "Too many thoughts." She joined me on the leather sofa, her hands finding mine in a gesture that felt both familiar and new, as if we were truly connecting without interference for the first time in years. "I failed you," she said simply. "I should have seen what was happening. They were careful, I replied. And they knew exactly how to manipulate both of us. The question now, Grandma said, is what do we do about it, about Richard's legal troubles, about the others who participated to varying degrees? It was the question I'd been avoiding. Despite everything, these were still my family members. The people I'd grown up with, shared holidays with, loved despite their flaws. I don't want revenge, I said finally. But there needs to be accountability. Grandma nodded. Richard will face legal consequences. There's no avoiding that now. But the others? Perhaps there's a path to reconciliation with time and genuine remorse. Do you think that's possible? After everything they did? I don't know, she admitted. But family is complicated, Cassandra. People make terrible mistakes, especially when they're afraid. That doesn't excuse what they did, but it might help us understand it. We sat in silence for a while, contemplating the broken pieces of our family and whether they could ever be put back together. Not as they were before, that was impossible, but perhaps as something new, something built on honesty rather than manipulation. Whatever happens, Grandma said, finally, we have each other now. No more interference, no more lies between us. As dawn began to break outside the windows, we made our way to the kitchen and prepared breakfast together. A simple meal of toast and tea, but the first of many we would share in the new reality we were building. The family group chat was gone, along with all its secrets and plots. But in its place was something more valuable, truth painful as it was, and the possibility of healing that could only begin once the deception had been exposed to light. 1 month after the explosive family meeting, I sat with Grandma on the sunroom patio watching autumn leaves drift across the expansive lawn. The estate felt different now, cleaner somehow, as if the exposure of long-hidden secrets had cleared the air. Grandma looked healthier than she had in months, her medication regulated properly, her mind sharp as ever. The doctor says my blood pressure is back to normal, she announced, sipping her tea. Apparently being properly medicated rather than deliberately over-sedated does wonders for one's health. I smiled, still amazed by her resilience. At 86, she had weathered a familial betrayal that would have crushed many younger people, emerging with her dignity and determination intact. "Have you heard from your lawyer about Richard?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "The prosecutor offered a plea deal," I replied. "He'll serve some time, but not as much as he might have." The financial crimes were too extensive to ignore completely. Richard's fall had been swift and public. The gambling debts that had driven him to embezzle from Grandma had been just the beginning. Investigations revealed years of financial misconduct, both with the family estate and his own business. His reputation was in tatters, his carefully cultivated image of success revealed as a hollow facade. And his other problems, Grandma asked, delicately referring to the dangerous creditors Richard had mentioned. Apparently, the evidence we turned over to the authorities gave them enough to investigate some of Richard's connections. They're more interested in his creditors than in him at this point. I didn't mention that I'd received anonymous threatening calls in the first week after the confrontation. Kevin had upgraded the security system yet again, and Maya had moved into the guest suite permanently as Grandma's companion. The calls had stopped after police made several arrests connected to Richard's gambling debts. Heather called again yesterday. I told Grandma, changing the subject to something less grim. "And did you answer this time?" I nodded. We talked for almost an hour. She's starting therapy, trying to understand why she went along with Richard's schemes for so long. Of all my family members, Heather had made the most genuine efforts toward reconciliation. Weekly calls, handwritten letters of apology, even offering to liquidate what little she had left to make amends. I wasn't ready to fully trust her again, but I was willing to leave the door open. And Jason, Grandma asked, "Still in Seattle with his ex-wife and kids?" The apology letter he sent seemed sincere, but I'm not sure. I trailed off uncertain how to express my complicated feelings about my brother. Forgiveness isn't an all-or-nothing proposition, Grandma said gently. And it doesn't have to happen all at once. I know, I'm just not there yet. The family foundation was being restructured under Grandma's guidance, with me taking an active role in its management. We'd implemented checks and balances to prevent any single person from having too much control, a lesson painfully learned from Richard's mismanagement. Maya joined us on the patio carrying a tray with fresh scones. "Baked these myself," she announced proudly. Mrs. Perry's recipe. The elderly housekeeper had retired shortly after the family confrontation, unable to reconcile her loyalty to Grandma with the years she'd unwittingly spent enabling Richard's schemes by following his instructions. Maya had gradually taken over more household duties, becoming more family than employee. Kevin called, Maya added as she poured more tea. "He's finished installing the new security cameras at the gatehouse." Kevin, too, had become part of our makeshift family, his unwavering loyalty during the crisis, earning him a permanent place in our inner circle. He'd moved his tools into the old gardener's cottage and spent his days maintaining the estate with the same care he'd shown for 30 years. "I've been thinking," Grandma said suddenly, "this house is too big for just me. Even with Maya here. Perhaps you'd consider moving in, Cassandra." The offer took me by surprise. "What about my apartment? My job in the city? You could commute. Or work remotely some days. The East Wing could be converted into a proper office for you." She smiled. "I'm not trying to control your life, dear. Just suggesting we might both benefit from the arrangement." I considered it. My tiny apartment seemed especially lonely after spending weeks at the estate. And while I loved my job, the idea of coming home to family, real family built on trust rather than obligation, held powerful appeal. "I'll think about it," I promised. Later that evening, my phone chimed with a notification. A new group message. For a moment, my heart raced with old anxiety until I saw the group name Mitchell Family, too, created by Grandma herself with Maya, Kevin, me, and even Heather included. Grandma's first message read, "Family isn't just blood. It's trust, respect, and love. Let's rebuild with those foundations." I smiled as I typed my response, feeling something that had been knotted inside me for months begin to loosen. The pain wasn't gone. Betrayal leaves scars that never completely fade, but alongside it was something new, growing hope, forgiveness, and the possibility of a different kind of family than the one that had betrayed me. That night, as Grandma and I looked through old photo albums planning which ones to digitize first, I realized that the inheritance that mattered most wasn't money or property or even the family name. It was this. The authentic connection between us, the shared memories and values that no conspiracy could ever truly sever. The group chat without me had failed in its ultimate goal. They hadn't managed to cut me out of Grandma's will, but more importantly, they hadn't managed to cut me out of her heart. And in the end, that was the only inheritance that truly mattered. Thank you so much for following along with my story. If you've ever discovered a betrayal from someone you trusted, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. How did you handle it? Were you able to rebuild that relationship, or did you find it healthier to move on? Don't forget to like this video if you found my story meaningful, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with anyone who might be going through something similar. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more powerful than the family we're born into. Thanks again for listening, and I wish you strength if you're facing your own family challenges.